is so good to have you all here. And this has been a year. I mean, a lot of us have experienced some things in this year. Some of us have experienced grief. Some of us have got new body parts. I got a whole new shoulder. Some of us, things went wonderfully well. But it seems to me that with us and with this world, this year has been filled with change. Change is a constant. There are those that I have met in life who wanted to live life in such a way that there was never any change. Well, that's a contradiction. To live is to change. To live is to transform. But it's our choice what it is we want to transform into. We have a choice. We have choices all the time. But what is your choice? Those of you who are online, what are you choosing to be? Now, we have some people resolutions for the year. You know, people set up resolutions, and I can't help myself. I'm already coming up with resolutions. Someone was telling me they're going to be using affirmations rather than resolutions. I'm going to do both. But this is a symbolic time of what is it that we envision for our future, for our new year. Who is it that we want to be? I used to think in terms of what is it that I want to accomplish? What are the things that I want to achieve? What are the things that I want to be able to click off and say, this is what I did? And there are still those things. But what's become more important to me is, who will I be? Who will I be in this new year? Who will I be going forward? Now, I shared with you about my Christmas Eve shopping, yes, at Whole Foods. So I wanted to repeat the experience and go to Safeway. And see, does this work at Safeway too? Maybe the Whole Foods crowd is more evolved or something. How about Safeway? Let's go to Safeway. So, went to Safeway, and, you know, people had stuff on their minds. You could see it. They were kind of looking down. They were very focused. Have you ever seen the people who, when they get their grocery carts, are racing through the store? It's like they're in a competition to see who can get done first. Maybe you're one of those. You're pushing through the aisle, and there may be some unfortunate pedestrian that steps in front of you. You don't pay them any mind. You just go forward. And there are some of those whenever I go to the store. But I chose to let people by. I had my cart. Other people wanted to go by. I let them go by. And I just smiled. They would stop. And they would say, thank you. And then I watched the ripple effect of how then they treated others with love and a smile. There was a woman in front of me in the line who could not find her money. She looked and she looked. She dug everything out of her bag, and she looked and she looked. The people behind me, I could see the exasperation growing, the irritation. You know, they had already put all their stuff on that little conveyor belt, and they had a big load because they were preparing for New Year's. And in their frustration and sternness, they started packing their stuff back into their grocery cart so they could get in another line. I find it very fun to just walk in the Spirit. And what I'm saying isn't to focus on me, but just how fun it is to live in the Spirit, to live from that place of being a new creation, that I don't have to look at my watch constantly to see how fast I can get through the store. Maybe there's people here for me to meet. I said to the clerk, "How much does she owe?" The clerk told me. I pulled it out of my wallet. They said, "Here, I'd like to pay for it." It's all right. It's okay. Because it was a thrill for me to see this woman's face light up and surprise and look at me like she doesn't know me. But as you said, Cindy, what affects one affects us all. We're all in this together. And she was so thankful. She even crossed herself. She said, "Thank you." And the clerk whispered to me and said, "Thank you. That was so nice." And the people that were behind me that were getting their knickers in a twist, she suddenly got this big smile on her face. And she said, "Thank you. That was so nice of you." And she slowed down and began putting her stuff back up on the conveyor belt. Her husband, who was waiting for her, I thought was ignoring the whole situation, after I was done, came up to me and said, "Thank you." It was a simple thing. It was just being in the moment. Rather than being frustrated, why not be part of the solution? Couldn't we do that in the world? Rather than complaining and saying, "Why doesn't somebody do something?" Maybe we're the somebody. Maybe we're the ones that we've been praying for. Maybe we're the ones who are to bring about this change. Maybe instead of waiting for God to swoop down, maybe God is coming in as us. Maybe. Wow. So who do you choose to be? Who do you choose to be? Now there are times where I get frustrated. Don't put me on the saint pedestal just quite yet. There are times, and my wife sees this sometimes, where I get frustrated. It's like, something triggers me. Do you have triggers? Do you? Do you have buttons that someone can push? And maybe the people who push them are the ones who installed them. Family. Anyway, who do you choose to be? It's your choice. It's in your power. Who do you choose? In the book of Joshua, in the Hebrew Scriptures, it says, "Choose you this day whom you shall serve." Who will it be? What will your day be? Instead of being a victim and being powerless, how about taking your power back and choosing who you will be? It's pretty powerful. Now, I'm talking about being born anew. And I'm using as a passage John chapter 3, verse 3. This comes in the context of a Jewish scholar, Jewish teacher and leader by the name of Nicodemus. Some of you may have heard of him. And he comes to Jesus at night. Now, maybe he didn't want others to see him talking with Jesus, because he was like a Jewish leader, and it's like, oh, maybe I'll do this on the down low, kind of anonymous. I can just see him with sunglasses on at night, not wanting anyone to see him. Or it could be that he just wanted the privacy. And I believe it was an appointment. Because Jesus was always surrounded by his disciples and other people. I believe that Nicodemus set up an appointment. And there were disciples around. There must have been. Who wrote the story down? So, they were probably within earshot. Nicodemus, this leader at the temple, said, no one could do the things that you do if God were not with them. And in what looks like a complete change of topic, Jesus says, you know what? You need, and everyone needs, to be born anew. Now, that word anew in the Greek is anothen. Its primary meaning is above, or from the heavens, or from one source. This is not coming from unity literature. This is coming from Greek scholars, okay? Because I studied this stuff way before I was in unity. So Jesus was saying, you need to be born from above, that is, from a higher consciousness. You need to be born from your source, that which you come from. You need to be born from that which is essential and absolute, rather than getting lost in the trivia and in the circumstantial. I get tripped up by the circumstantial once in a while. Do you? Has anyone gotten a letter from the IRS lately? It's like, oh, shoot. Not exactly that word. But circumstances, they happen because it's part of life, and life changes. There are things that happen in our lives. But it's all for us to have the opportunity to transform, to become born anew. And as I see it, that's a daily task. It's not a one-time thing. You know, some people feel like it's a one-time thing. You did it once and it's done forever. I think it's an ongoing thing. Every day I am choosing to be born anew. Every day I'm choosing who to be. Every day I am choosing to be born from source. Now later in this chapter 3, and oh, by the way, this is the verse that in many translations says you must be born again. But there's so much baggage around that phrase, born again. And that is not the literal translation. That particular word is only translated that way in this chapter. It's not translated that way elsewhere. So the translators, I don't know, sometimes they take a little bit of liberties. But it's really about being born from above, being born from one source, being born from spirit. And Jesus goes on in this passage to say, those who are born of the flesh are flesh, and those who are born of the spirit are spirit. We are here to be born of the spirit, to live in the power of spirit. That example I gave from Safeway, that's living in the spirit. There's times where I went in to see Felix and Carmela. Hope it's okay to say this. We'll find out. And there were times where Felix would say, there's not exactly a protocol for this, but this is what I'm going to do. Because Felix was in the flow, is following that spirit. Being in the moment, being in the present, brings great healing, great peace. God is here. You may be feeling low today. Maybe there's something discouraging you. It was certainly hit me hard when I heard of Bruce's passing, Bruce Schultz. But then I realized how he chose to live. He chose to live from the presence of Spirit. He chose to see the very best in people. He chose to support people. He chose to love others. What a great choice. How do you choose to live your life? Later in that chapter, verse 16, anybody who's ever watched football should know this verse, because someone holds up a sign at the goalpost that says John 3:16. And that's the verse that talks about God gave his only begotten Son. There's another way to translate that, and this comes from Eric Butterworth, a Unity teacher, that Jesus was begotten only of the Father. Begotten only of the Father. Jesus called all of us sons and daughters of God. Jesus didn't claim exclusive rights. All of us are. What that means is any one of us can choose to be begotten only of God. That we are only here for God. We are only here to be that presence of Spirit. What is your choice? Do you want to do things the same old way? I remember when I was helping to build, doing physical labor, carrying huge buckets of concrete and rock. We were building a Bible college in the Philippines. Visayan district in Cebu City. It was hot. People were complaining. I loved it. That's when I first found out I loved tropical weather. And we were doing a lot of this work on the second floor, no scaffolding, walking on these concrete beams about this wide with rebar, this metal that's in help to reinforce concrete. Rebar was coming up, and it was also coming out of the pillars this way. I lost count how many times I ran my head in the rebar, balancing up on that second floor beam. I mean, I had so many puncture wounds, my head, my hands, all over. It's like, how many times does it take before I learn not to do it that way? How many times will I hit my head on the rebar? I wondered that as I'm standing up like 15 feet in the air. How many times will it take you to continue to do things in a way that leads you to misery? Does complaining improve your life? Does it improve your mood? Does it improve your relationships? It's kind of like hitting our head on the rebar. What other things do you do that creates misery in your life? And I'm going to say something. You may not like it, and if you don't like it, just know that You don't have to believe it. You can just chew on it. Just chew on it. Or you can stick it away in a little pigeonhole for later when you want to maybe pull it out and look at it again. You don't have to buy this. Ready? Deep breath. Let's take a deep breath. We create our own misery. We are the ones who create our misery. We are creators. We can choose a different way. We can choose to stop hitting our head on the rebar. We can. Or we can keep doing it the same old way and claim that someone or something is against us, even though we say there's only one power, one presence in my life, or as my life and as the universe, God the good. Even though we say that over and over and over, sometimes we act, oh, there has to be an exception here. Something or someone must be against me. We can choose to live differently. We can choose to be born anew. We can choose to live from the power and the presence of Spirit. We can choose who we are right now. It's your choice. Tonight, we get to practice this. If you would like to, it's a fun time. 6 o'clock tonight, we're going to have our burning bowl service. First time I came to a Unity church, they said, we're going to have the burning bowl. And I'm like, one picture that comes to mind is a big bowl, like, with horns, setting it on fire. And I wondered, what kind of church have I stepped into? We perform sacrifices? This is a bowl, and you write down things that you want to release, the things that you keep hitting your head on. You write those things down, and you set it to the fire, and it's magic paper. It goes up instantly, no smoke, no residue. You just release it and let it go. And those of you who live somewhere else and can't be here, if you set something on fire, do it safely. You could write it on toilet paper and flush it. You could write it on paper, crumple it up, put it in the trash can. There's other ways to do it safely. But it's a way to release things. It's a powerful service. And then we write letters to God. Letters of what we are envisioning for the new year. Letters of who we want to be. Letters declaring the truth of who we are. And then we have what's called a white stone ceremony. All in one service. A white stone ceremony where these words or phrases come to us in meditation of who we are to be in this new year. I keep them. I keep them up on my counter, and I look at them frequently. This is a time to help us to transform, so I encourage you to come at 6 p.m. tonight. Choose who you will be this day and be born anew. Thank you. Let's meditate a little bit on this. Let it simmer. I invite you to take a deep breath. You may want to relax your gaze or close your eyes or whatever is comfortable for you. Take a deep breath, knowing the power and presence of Spirit is living in us, that we can be born anew at any time we choose it. We choose who we will be. We choose whether or not to suffer. We choose whether or not to be joyful. We choose whether or not to be of service. We choose whether or not to be the presence of God in this world. What is your choice? Let's breathe into that as we have a minute of silence. We give thanks for new beginnings. We give thanks for the presence of Spirit that we are. We open ourselves, God, to be born anew. And so it is. Amen.